I was 36, a single mother, and the sole pillar of stability in a family built on sand. I worked as a senior data analyst, a job that demanded precision and logic, qualities that were completely absent in my family life. To my parents, I was not a daughter. I was a utility, a walking, talking emergency fund. My younger sister, Chloe, who was 29, floated through life on a cloud of artistic aspirations and funded irresponsibility. She hadn't held a real job in her life, preferring to call herself a freelance creator, a title that seemed to involve more brunching than creating. She was, and always had been, the golden child, her whims treated as prophecies, her failures framed as poetic struggles. I was the forgotten one, the reliable foundation they all stood on, noticed only when a crack appeared in their own finances. It began insidiously, a slow drip of emotional and financial blackmail that I had normalized over the years. The requests were always couched in the language of familial duty. My mother would call, her voice a careful blend of concern and command, telling me Chloe was just on the cusp of a breakthrough but was struggling. "Help your sister," she would say. "It is what families do." And I, conditioned for compliance, would do it. I paid for the web design course she abandoned after 2 weeks. I funded the down payment for a professional camera that she later sold to finance a trip to a yoga retreat in Costa Rica. I sent money for her groceries, her utilities, her endless stream of art supplies that never seemed to translate into actual art. Each transfer was accompanied by a promise that this was the last time, that she was about to get back on her feet. But Chloe's feet were perpetually, comfortably airborne, and my parents were the relentless wind beneath her wings, a wind generated by my labor. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video. I lived a life of deliberate modesty. My daughter, Maya, who was 9, and I resided in a small, 2-bedroom apartment on the noisier side of town. The rent was manageable, and it was ours. Every decision I made, every extra hour I worked, every expense I cut was for her. I funneled my resources into her future, a savings account for college, tuition for her art classes, the best organic food I could afford. Maya was my world. She was a preternaturally observant child, quiet and deep, with eyes that missed nothing. She saw the lines of exhaustion on my face after a long week. She saw the way I would stare at my banking app, my jaw tight, after a call from my mother. And she was watching, sketching in her notebook at the kitchen table. On the afternoon, the carefully constructed dam of my patience finally broke. It was a Tuesday, gray and drizzling, matching the mood that had settled over me for days. I had just paid for Maya to attend a specialized summer camp for gifted young artists, a significant expense that had taken me 6 months to save for. It was an investment in her talent, in her joy, a tangible piece of a future I was trying to build for her. That was when the text from my mother arrived. It was not a request, it was a demand. Chloe's lease on her new artist Loft is up for renewal. She needs first and last month's rent and the security deposit. We know you got that bonus. Do the right thing. I read the message and felt a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. They knew about my bonus because I had made the mistake of mentioning it, a small moment of professional pride I had wanted to share. They had immediately cataloged it as a resource for Chloe. I typed out a response, my fingers trembling slightly. "I am sorry I cannot. I have significant expenses for Maya right now." I hit send and tried to breathe. For 2 hours there was silence. I thought perhaps for the first time they had heard me. I was wrong. A loud, aggressive banging on my apartment door shattered the quiet. It was not a knock. It was a summons, the kind meant to intimidate. I looked through the peephole and my heart sank. It was my parents. My mother stood in front, her face a mask of indignation. My father stood just behind her, his arms crossed, a familiar look of condescending disappointment on his face, the look he reserved for my lectures. I opened the door. My mother pushed past me without a word of greeting. "Why did you ignore our follow-up messages?" She snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Her eyes scanned my small, tidy apartment with disdain, as if its modesty was a personal insult to her. "I already told you, Mom. I cannot help with Chloe's rent this time," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. I closed the door, trying to reclaim some semblance of control over my own home. "So, your daughter's little hobby camp is more important than your sister having a roof over her head," my father said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. He sauntered into my living room and sat on my couch as if he owned it. He picked up one of Maya's drawings from the coffee table, a beautiful watercolor of a bird in flight, and looked at it with a dismissive smirk. "I am not responsible for Chloe's lifestyle choices," I said, planting my feet. My voice was rising, fueled by years of suppressed anger. "She is a 29-year-old woman. She had a dozen opportunities, a dozen jobs she quit because they weren't fulfilling enough. Do not put her manufactured crises on me." That was when the thin veneer of civility shattered completely. My mother let out a scream of pure rage. "Ungrateful child," she shrieked, her face contorting. "You think your fancy job and your little apartment make you better than us." She threw her expensive leather purse, and it hit the wall with a sickening thud, knocking over a framed photo of Maya and me. Before I could even react to the violation, she was on me. Her hand came up and she slapped me hard across the face. The sting was shocking, electric. It stole my breath. As I stumbled back, my father surged forward. He grabbed my upper arm, his fingers digging into my bicep like claws. He shoved me backward. "You need to learn some respect," he snarled. I lost my footing and my head cracked against the sharp corner of a bookshelf. A hot, wet sensation trickled down my temple. The world swam for a moment. From the doorway of her room, Maya screamed. "Mom," she cried out, a sound of pure terror that ripped through me. She started to run toward me, her small face a mess of tears and fear. My mother intercepted her, grabbing her by the shoulders. "Stay out of this, little girl," she said, her voice cold and menacing. "Maybe if your mother knew how to listen like her sister Chloe does, she wouldn't have to be punished." Punished. The word echoed in the ringing of my ears. I was not a rebellious teenager. I was a grown woman, a mother, being assaulted in my own home, in front of my own child. Something inside me, a tightly wound coil of duty and guilt that had defined my entire existence, snapped. I stood up, my body shaking with a mixture of pain and a terrifying, new kind of clarity. My head throbbed, and I could feel the sticky warmth of blood matting my hair. Maya was frozen, her tiny hands clenched into fists, silent tears streaming down her face. She had seen it all. She had seen the ugliness I had tried so desperately to shield her from. "You need to leave," I said, my voice low and shaking with a fury I did not recognize in myself. "Now. We will leave when you transfer the money for Chloe," my father barked, sitting back down on the couch, completely unfazed. "Until then, we will stay right here to make sure you do not waste any more of it on frivolous things." They sat there, on my couch, my blood slowly dripping onto the worn hardwood floor. My daughter's silent sobs from the corner of the room did not move them. The only thing that mattered was Chloe. That night I locked myself and Maya in my bedroom. She lay beside me in the dark, her small body trembling, her hand clutching mine like a lifeline. "Mom," she whispered into the darkness, her voice thick with tears. "Why do Grandma and Grandpa hate you so much?" I had no answer for her. I could not explain the poison of generational favoritism, of narcissism, of entitlement. So I just held her, stroking her hair until her breathing evened out in sleep. But as I lay there, feeling the throbbing in my head and the deeper ache in my soul, something in me did not just crack, it was pulverized. And from the dust, something new and hard began to form. The next morning, I put on a large pair of sunglasses to hide the deep purple bruise blooming around my eye and drove Maya to school. I watched her walk up the steps, her backpack seeming too large for her small frame, and my resolve solidified into steel. From the school, I did not go to work. I drove straight to the county courthouse. My name was not on the lease of my parents' charming suburban house, the one they had lived in for 30 years. But I knew the owner. I knew something they could never have imagined. For the past 4 years, I had been living like a pauper, but I had been earning like a professional. Every raise, every bonus, every late-night freelance project I took on, the money did not go to new clothes or fancy vacations. It went into a separate, hidden account. I was not just saving, I was aggressively investing, guided by a mentor I had met through a freelance gig. And 2 years ago, one of those investments had come to fruition. My parents' house, the house I grew up in, the house that held so many painful memories, had been my grandparents' home. My parents had inherited it free and clear, but through years of financial mismanagement and funding Chloe's lifestyle, they had taken out a second and third mortgage, eventually losing it in a quiet foreclosure. They were ashamed and had managed to rent it back from the bank, pretending to all their friends that they still owned it. When it came up for sale again, listed far below market value, I bought it. I purchased it through a carefully constructed LLC, my identity buried beneath layers of legal paperwork. They had no idea that the monthly rent checks they so often paid late were eventually making their way back to me. For 2 years, I had done nothing with this knowledge. I saw it as a safety net, a strange, secret inheritance I had reclaimed. But now, sitting in the courthouse parking lot with a medical report from the urgent care clinic documenting my injuries, I had a new plan. My parents wanted to lecture me on family values. It was time for me to give them a masterclass. I would not be loud. I would not be emotional. I wanted silence, precision, and power. For the first time in my life, I was not going to explain, justify, or beg for understanding. I was simply going to act. That Friday, with Maya safely at a friend's house for a sleepover, I walked into the family court and filed for an emergency restraining order. The photographs of the bruises darkening on my arm and the ugly gash on my scalp, combined with the detailed medical report, were more than enough. I stood before the clerk, my voice steady and clear as I recounted the events. They assaulted me in my own home, in front of my 9-year-old daughter, I stated, because I refused to give them money to pay my adult sister's rent. The officer who took my final statement did not look at me with pity. He looked at me with respect. "You did the right thing," he said. "We will handle serving them." A wave of relief so profound it almost buckled my knees washed over me. The first domino had fallen. Next, I called the property manager who handled the day-to-day operations of the house I owned. It was a professional relationship. She had no idea of my personal connection to the tenants. I kept my voice cool and businesslike. "I am calling about the property on Elm Street," I began. "Are the tenants current on their rent?" She sighed, a sound I knew well. "No, ma'am, they are 3 months behind. We were preparing to send them a formal notice to pay or quit." "Do not," I said, a cold certainty in my voice. "I will be handling it myself. Please draft a 30-day notice of lease termination. I will be taking possession of the property at the end of the notice period." There was a brief pause on the other end. "Of course," she said. "I will have it sent via certified mail tomorrow morning." That evening, as if on cue, the texts from my parents began. They had likely been served with the restraining order. They were furious. The messages were a vile cocktail of accusation and gaslighting. My father wrote, "You have embarrassed this entire family with your lies." My mother added, "Now Maya will see what a monster her mother truly is, turning on her own blood." My father again, "You will regret choosing strangers and police over your own sister." They were flailing, trying to land blows in the dark, completely unaware that I had already disarmed them. They did not know that a certified letter was already on its way to their mailbox, a letter that would detonate the comfortable world they had built on my back. But Chloe knew something was wrong. A few days later, our paths crossed in the sterile, brightly lit aisle of a supermarket. She was pushing a cart overflowing with gourmet cheeses, expensive cuts of meat, and imported wine. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on the fading bruise on my cheekbone, which the sunglasses could not entirely hide. Her expression was not one of concern, it was one of utter contempt. "Still playing the victim, I see," she scoffed, tossing a bottle of overpriced kombucha into her cart. "You mean the victim of your parasitic lifestyle?" I replied, my voice calm, almost conversational. It unnerved her. "I am not playing anything, Chloe. I am simply clearing the stage. You are about to find out what it is like to perform without a safety net." She blinked, her perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowing in confusion. "What on earth are you talking about?" I just smiled, a small, tight smile that did not reach my eyes, and pushed my cart past her. Some lessons can only be learned through the harsh reality of a fall. The eviction notice arrived the next morning. My mother's call came minutes later. She was not screaming, not at first. Her voice was thin, incredulous. "Elena, we received a letter. It says we have to be out of our house in 30 days. This is a mistake. You have to fix this," I answered without a trace of emotion. "It is not a mistake. And the house is not yours, it is mine." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy, thick with disbelief and dawning horror. "How?" she whispered. "The same way I paid for Chloe's car, her rent, her entire life for the last decade," I said, my voice like ice. "With my job. Now you have 30 days. I suggest you ask your golden child for help. Perhaps she can sell some of her art. Where are we supposed to go?" She finally wailed, the panic setting in. "That is your problem to solve," I said. "Not mine." Then I hung up the phone, and for the first time in my adult life I felt no guilt. I felt no pity. I felt the clean, liberating sensation of a chain breaking. I felt free. The following weeks were a maelstrom of chaos that I observed from a serene distance. My parents, barred from contacting me directly by the restraining order, launched a smear campaign through our extended family. They called aunts, uncles, and cousins, spinning a tale of a cruel, mentally unstable daughter who had stolen their home out of pure spite. I remained silent. My actions would speak for themselves. The truth, I was learning, did not require a defense. Instead of engaging in the drama, I focused on my new reality. I picked Maya up from school one afternoon with a genuine smile on my face. Guess what? I told her. We are moving. Her eyes, which had been so shadowed with worry, lit up. Really? Where are we going? To a place that is truly 100% ours, I said. I had closed on a small cottage a few towns over. It was nothing grand, but it was perfect. It had a fenced-in yard for a future puppy, a sun-drenched breakfast nook, and a garden filled with Maya's favorite lavender bushes. It was a house built on my own terms, filled with peace. Real, tangible peace. Meanwhile, the family I had left behind was imploding. A cousin, one of the few who had called to hear my side of the story, gave me updates. My parents were frantically trying to find an apartment, but had no rental history and terrible credit. They had turned to Chloe, their precious investment, who, according to the last vitriolic voicemail she left them, was now far too busy with a new project to be burdened with their problems. It was, I thought, a poetic sort of justice. I did not feel vengeful. I felt healed. But the final act was yet to come, a final face-to-face closing of a chapter. Exactly 30 days from the date on the eviction notice, I drove to my old childhood street. Noon was the deadline. I parked across the road and watched. The manicured lawn I remembered from my youth was a disaster zone, littered with black trash bags, broken pieces of particle board furniture, and my mother's once prized wrought iron patio swing, now spotted with rust. My father was pacing the driveway like a lion in a cage too small for his rage. My mother was sitting on the front steps, her face buried in her hands. Chloe was nowhere in sight. I later learned she had taken a last-minute flight to Miami to network and clear her head. I took a deep breath and got out of the car. Maya, who had insisted on coming, slipped her hand into mine. Her small fingers squeezed mine tighter as we crossed the street. She had her sketchpad tucked into her backpack. "I want to see," she had said to me that morning, her voice firm. "I want to see what happens when the story has a real ending." The moment my mother saw us, she shot to her feet. "Elena, you cannot do this," she snapped, her voice raspy from crying or shouting or both. "We are your family. You are throwing us out onto the street like we are garbage." I stopped a few feet from her, my posture straight, my gaze unwavering. "I was garbage to you when I came to you bleeding," I said, my voice even and low. "I was garbage when you hit me in front of my daughter. You have the audacity to ask for sympathy now." My dad stomped toward me, his face purple with fury. "You think this is power?" He spat. "This money? You have become an arrogant, heartless monster. You are nothing but a tenant who bought herself a paper crown." "No," I replied calmly. "I became the landlord. Of my life, and as it turns out, of yours too." He lunged, reaching for my arm the same way he had in my apartment. But this time I did not flinch. I did not cower. I stood my ground. "Touch me again," I said, my voice sharp and cold as a razor's edge, "and the police will be here before your next pathetic lie is out of your mouth." He froze, his hand hovering in the air. He looked into my eyes, and for the first time he did not see the scared, pliable daughter he had created. He saw a stranger. He saw the end of his control. Maya, who had been silent beside me, took a small step forward. Her voice was quiet, but it carried across the driveway with the weight of absolute truth. "You should not have hurt my mom," she said, looking directly at my mother. "You lied about what love is." My mother's lip trembled. A flicker of something, shame, perhaps, or just self-pity crossed her face. But there was no apology. There never would be. "You will regret this for the rest of your life," she hissed. "No," I said, turning away from them. "I already spent a lifetime full of regrets. The biggest one was letting you stay in my life for so long." They just stood there, two crumbling statues of entitlement, their power and pride scattered around them in the debris of their eviction. For my entire life, they had held me captive with guilt, obligation, and fear. But today, the roles were not just reversed. The entire game had been erased. It felt like taking my first full, clean breath of air. I turned to Maya. "Let's go home." We walked back to our car, and this time we did not look back. Later that evening, in the warm, bright kitchen of our new cottage, I poured us both tea, chamomile for her, green for me. She sat at our new kitchen table, her legs swinging freely, her sketchpad open. Outside, the lavender bushes swayed in the golden light of the setting sun. "Do you feel better now, Mom?" she asked, looking up from her drawing. I considered her question for a long moment. "I do not feel happy or sad or angry," I said. "I feel clean, like a deep stain has finally been washed away." She nodded, a solemn, wise expression on her young face, as if she understood completely. I had started seeing a therapist. Maya had filled half her new sketchbook with vibrant, colorful paintings. We were rebuilding, not just a home, but the self-worth that had been systematically dismantled for years. A few weeks later, I received a text from my cousin. My parents had found a place, a cramped, one-bedroom apartment over a boarded-up dry cleaner. Chloe had officially ghosted them, leaving behind nothing but a drained Venmo account and a final, furious voicemail about her needing to protect her own energy. The relatives they had tried to rally to their cause were keeping a polite distance. They had burned every bridge to keep one child warm, and now they were left shivering in the cold. I never replied to the text. Instead, I took a picture of Maya holding up her latest creation. It was a painting of our little cottage. Two stick figures, one tall and one small, stood in the yard, holding hands. Above them, a big, bright sun was smiling down. I posted it to my private social media page with a simple caption. We do not live in fear anymore. And we did not. Please subscribe to our channel and tell us in comments from where are you watching this video.